the first like 3 minutes. No, seriously, it's like, hey, how you doing, everybody? So technically, right now, everything's live that we're doing right now. Everything's kind of going out over the interweb. Oh yeah, that's an old thing. I don't know.
Sweet.
I mean, this is kind of the fun part where it's like people think that's like, okay, what are they doing here? And then we say stuff like, hey, go ahead and make a comment. Let us know that you're kind of out there, everybody. Make sure we actually have a little bit of everything here. Oh, there's a little bit about who we are, but why don't we go right here?
There's some life.
Oh my gosh, look at you guys. Wow, this is kind of
Ooh.
hot. We're playing with new things altogether.
Ooh.
Look at this. We can totally, oh my gosh, we can totally do it this way. Fucking come
Sick.
on, dude.
Even better.
Like, like I'm telling you, you just mess around with this long enough that you figure out how it goes. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me. Latoya, Trish, thanks so much for tuning in already. I know you guys kind of had the ear marker on there. I have today on Stream of Consciousness. By the way, no bells and whistles today. We're still trying to figure out how this stuff works. I've got to go like a little bit at a time. By the way, no trickery in camera work. By the way, he is sitting right over, right over here. Again, I'm happy to have here today, though. Welcome back to Stream of Consciousness, the podcast that questions everything, as well as our development, our place in the universe, and where in the heck are we going here, right, everybody? I have with us today Caleb Nelson. He is a spiritual fitness coach. Now, what is a spiritual fitness coach? It's, well, we're going to figure that out. I'm going to share a little bit of my journey. You're going to share a little bit of your journey. And Caleb, of course, we're going to get to know him. And by the way, back by popular demand, we are going to do the 5 good minutes. We're also going to take a look at the most interesting part of his astrological chart. We're going to embarrass the crap out of him on an international level.
Sick.
There you go. So first of all, listen, I am going to go back to our kind of widescreen here so you can kind of see it. There we go. Just a couple of guys hanging out. That's what we do and how we do it. So, Caleb, listen, do a little introduction here, bro. What brings you into our neck of the woods, and what does a spiritual fitness coach do?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. Hello, friends out there in the universe. Glad to be here. Mostly, I just like hanging out with you because we're buddies. So I'll start with that. I
Because
just
I'm
like
a beacon of health.
that. We're the beacons of friends and happiness and joy and love and prosperity in the world. That's what I like to think, brother.
We may or may not. I mean, the only thing I've ever found disturbing about you is that you don't eat the cornbread.
That cornbread. I've never actually liked cornbread. I've always thought it was dry and it just doesn't like sit well with me. I don't know.
So, do you do like that balance of is this worth it? Like, you don't mind going down the path, but you're like, I better
Oh,
get a reward on this.
big time. Oh, yeah. When it comes to food and all those things, I don't believe anything is good or bad. It's just more of it's going to bring me joy and how much.
Yeah,
I got a sweet tooth like you would not believe, like ice cream, all those things.
I've seen your dental bills.
Get there.
Yeah.
I have a great dentist if you want. If you want the connection, she's great. She's awesome. My wife picked her out. So wherever my wife said I was going,
Yeah. And by the way, that you're also like blowing up, like 5 different things. First of all, he will refer you to everyone he knows. That's the fun part. Second of all, he's got a guy. He's always got a guy. Like that's like we became the guy for the guy, right? Yeah, Trisha's giving you a pass on that cornbread thing. By the way, she's from the South. She knows her shit. Number two, I also think like even in my own journey, like that's when I really kind of turned the corner when I started to do. I came across a book called Eat This, Not That,
Mhm.
and it was a men's health thing, and I think a lot of guys kind of started to subscribe to stuff like that, where it was like, I'm not going to have the triple cheeseburger. I'm going to get the grilled chicken sandwich, and I can still have the fries if I want them, but I'm only going to half portion it and that sort of thing. That was my kind of step in self control. But like when you jump into like the spiritual health coach thing, like you're kind of putting a lot of stuff in the blender. How do you separate it, and where do you think your guidance really helps?
Ooh, great question.
I have a book and a YouTube channel.
All those things, right?
Mm.
Well, I realized long ago one of my initial influences around shifting to more of the internal work was a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and I had also reached a point in my career where you could shine the surface only so far, but people wouldn't keep the results. And the book essentially illuminated this fact: if you don't change the internal image,
Yep.
doesn't matter what you do at the outside, you're still going to see that ugly duckling on the inside. And we need to have a new conversation around that. And I had to go through my own stuff with destroying my body, going through burnout and all those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of like spiritual fitness, I think of it more from aligning your mind, your body, and your spirit to be able to handle the unknowns of life.
Yeah.
And of course, the most ultimate unknown is like, what happens after this? Like, how am I going to leave a legacy? And that's the way I start to think about is, how am I going to prepare my family, my friends, my business for the inevitable time that I'm no longer there? And that type of strength and resilience, I think, is so important to be able to set ourselves up for. So yes, the body is a great vehicle and a great avenue to start that conversation, but the conversation we need to have along the way is just as, if not more important, because it's speaking to like our values, we're speaking to our time management, our stress management, and ultimately our relationships with ourselves and the universe around us. And how you separate it, well, it's kind of, hey,
You don't.
Where are you at?
I love that answer. I mean, I'm kind of hearing what you're saying insofar that it's kind of like, a lot of things, like for me, I mean, the spiritual path for me, it started with my health. It started when I was 440 pounds, and I went, oh, this isn't going to work. And when you start to kind of make those changes, it does become performance based. I mean, I even kind of realize this now, and I'm still dealing with the stupid foot thing, but like it's a performance thing. I've only got so much in the tank, and then I've got to kind of replenish. And it's kind of like a running joke thing, and it's a little bit of spiritual hygiene in a way with how you treat your body. Because, tonight, I can guarantee you, I've already kind of planned out exactly where I'm going to go. I'm eating a banana that I'm going to finish in about another 45 minutes. Like I just kind of like, okay, I have a couple of bites here, let my body assimilate to it. I've got another reading this afternoon, and then I've got a drive, and somewhere in the middle of all that, I'm getting myself chicken salad because I need that kind of protein in order to do this kind of work, to do that evening. And if I'm hungry, I'll grab something afterwards, but I know that I've got to kind of like protein up because I know my body. Do you find that a lot of times the discovery of what you're bringing somebody to, whether it be from the spiritual side of it or the physical side of it, is kind of their own trial and error? I've never known you to say, this is the only way to go. How much do you let people kind of adopt how their body fits, and you talk about body type and that sort of thing? How much do you talk about that?
A lot, because at the end of the day, I think the most important, and this is one of the things you and I initially discussed when we started becoming friends, is that I believe my job is to put myself out of a job. And if I don't give you the tools to start to see the mirror for yourself and know how to navigate that
come up a little bit.
There we go. There we go. If I don't provide somebody the tools to be able to do that by themselves, I'm failing them. So a lot of it is questioning and saying, hey, here's something like, I don't use the word toxic almost ever. It's all about dose and how much. And you brought up something before. It's like, is it really worth it to me? I know the trade-offs if I have X amount. We'll use ice cream. I don't do super great with dairy, but I know if I have, let's call it a scoop, I'm not going to be sitting on the toilet for the rest of the day. It's that kind of idea. I know what and how much and when, but that came through exploration. And I've done every diet you could never think of. And I was part of the dogmas, and I grew up in a cult too on top of that. So like I was caught up in all that very rigid
spirit animal.
We went right there. That's why we're buddies.
Holy shit.
I was caught up in this rigid ideology, and I would jump from one thing to the next thing, whether it was from a fitness program or to a nutritional program. And I realized every single time it was like I was unwinding one religious belief to go adopt a new one, as opposed to, well, how do I interface with all this? How do I relate to my own body and my own relationship with food, my relationships in general with friends, family, what have you, and my work? I started to realize there was no difference. I had this all or nothing mindset, and it turned into a crash diet lifestyle, not just crash diet in the bastardized version we think about it today. It was my entire life of one extreme to the next. And that's what I wanted to be able to change, not only with myself, and now that's what I help navigate people through as well.
Yeah, I think what you're also talking about is like a level of like self-regulation too.
Yes.
Like that's one of those things. And hey, Lisa, and of course your old friend, here on all the crazy stuff that I do. The two of you together, yay! I know Caleb from CrossFit many years ago. Joy shared, always Joy. Hugs, and both of you from far, far away. Lisa, I don't know where you are in the world, but we should just have you on the show at some point. Musician, poet, mystic, Lisa. By the way, if you guys have a question for Caleb, go ahead and put it in the comments stuff. We'll bring you up. We'll bring you in. We'll be happy to answer any of the questions to you. Hello, Marnie. Hello, Trish. Hello, Latoya. Yeah, we're kind of tackling this here. And I think Friday mornings are going to be kind of a drop date for me to do this kind of live thing, whether it be in studio or bringing somebody in. It's kind of fun. Next week, I'm actually on the road. I'm going to be actually about this time next week, I will be at Graceland. You ever been to Memphis?
I have never been to Memphis. I'd like to go though.
Well, pack your bags, dude.
Albania.
I think right. You'd actually fit in one of my bags. I've got a pretty big trunk.
Yeah, I'll snuggle up.
And you're like 52 pounds. You're worth the $2.
Hey.
But with that though, like when you're like, what do you see most people be stuck with on the part of it? You're in Albania, of course you are.
I was just in Montenegro not too long ago, so right across the way. My wife is Albanian, so hello from over there. There we go.
Lisa, I think I ran into you in a grocery store, convenient mart, and you were just like, "Hey, Brandon, hey, what's going on?" It was so funny. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey," and I think it was only like the third time I'd ever actually met you. And I love the internet because you connect the dots with people, and then you see them in real life, and you're like, "Hello, you're right there. You're right in front of me." I may have been in a Stewart's. We're not going to advertise them until they give me some money. Dirty shakedown in this. So again, back to the question: what are the types of things that like you see most people get stuck with? When it comes to their own thing to this, because I'll even speak to the spiritual blockage that comes out of this. But what do you see?
I think one of the biggest things is shame and guilt off the rip.
Yeah, ding, ding, ding.
That's huge, and it's a consequence often of their own overwhelm. People, there's so much of like, this is the way, the only way, bad, good, carbs are bad, proteins, that like,
yeah,
name your ism, and they're all conflicting. And the problem is they are rigid. It is a way, it is a ideology. It never allows you to figure out who you are within that. And they all work until it doesn't. So the problem is somebody will go so far down into the rabbit hole with that, they'll buy in fully, and then their lifestyle, something will happen. They'll maybe have a kid, or they'll get a new job, or they'll open a business, or they'll get married. Name your thing. This new stress that they have to now integrate into their life and kind of massage into their world with the other relationships that come with it. It no longer fits the paradigm. It's not something they can just continue to do in this echo chamber. So the problem there is they don't know how to do that because they were never actually asked the question. They were said, this is the bill of goods. Yeah. We're going to jam this thing down your throat. Think of like every MLM thing that just like, this is the product that's going to save your life as some panacea kind of thing. And then you're like, well, it didn't solve my whole problem because I don't know who I am in that. So it's actually a consequence of overwhelm. And it's also a strange thing of not realizing it's a consequence of your own success. Yeah. That sounds really weird for somebody off the rip, but you were so successful in that stage in life that you are now at what I call your ceiling of complexity. You're banging your head against the wall. You're so knowledgeable. You have so much abundance in your life. You just don't know how to organize and reintegrate this. And you also don't know what the foundation of that is. So your foundation is shaky underneath it all. And you're trying to just pile more and more and more stuff on top of that. So the problem there, it's like you're trying to make your bed while you still got your clothes on it. You got to clear that off first, figure out what's underneath it, make the bed, and then organize everything else from there. Most people, once you give them permission to take a step back and be like, you're not a failure. You just don't know how to integrate this new knowledge, and you don't know how to find what is enjoyment and pleasure and balance. I don't particularly always like the word balance more. You don't know how to bring harmony to all these elements in your life, and you don't know how to navigate and be resilient through the things. You've never been taught how to do that.
Yeah, and I also think we also get a very kind of, we get a very kind of like unsolicited, like bag of goods that we don't even really see hitting us. I mean, what you're talking about, I can speak to every single point that you just talked about it from a spiritual standpoint. The first thing is like, you do go through this, and like from an astrological, standpoint, up until you're 24, you go through your first Jupiter returns at 24. And then you're like, man, I'm in a powerhouse this. And like you've got youth on your side, you can churn and burn, candle at both ends. Then all of a sudden you start to learn those lessons. And at about 30, you go through your Saturn return, which is when you start to be like, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And then you hit 36, which is where you're at the next level of like application and maturity. right? And during those years between 24 and 36, from an astrological standpoint, you've also gone through multiple Mars returns, which is effort and design. You've also gone through love, which is kind of your in and out, and your fallout, and your passions, and your value system, quite frankly. For me, I became very successful in the recruiting industry. Why? I had all of the elements that they needed for me to be successful. I worked my butt off. I was charming. I had all the things that I needed, and I was super successful to it. And then I hit that ceiling of like, well, what's next, right? Then on the other side of it, I'm going to throw this monkey wrench into it. I think a lot of the challenges that we have when it comes to food is actually past life residual stuff, which is things like fight or flight stuff. Like I died of starvation. So guess what? I'm going to chunk up in this life because I don't know when I'm going to eat this again. And that's also why I think a lot of our relationships with food from a spiritual standpoint has a lot to do with the conversation of like, why do I love cheese puffs so much? Well, they're delicious, right? But we all know that like when we look at the back of it, you're like, I'm eating air plus calories. Mm-hmm. Like it's not even like there's no nutritional value. There's a little niacin in it. Like fucking what? Like what is this? And by the way, yes, I read the back of every package, but you begin to kind of like look at that and then you're like, okay, well, what are those patterns? Does that ever come up for you? Like when you're talking to somebody, you're like, I just can't put a finger on it. Like this person had everything they needed. They had those things. And they keep going back to a premise that you can't really see. Whereas a coach, you're like, this still doesn't make sense. Has that ever happened with somebody that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it.
Yeah.
The classic, it comes back to your childhood and a lot of those things. But if you think of, I've talked a lot about generational health as my big driving mission right now.
Keep going.
And it's, at some point we have to start to forgive the past, but you have to first understand it.
Ancestral cycle right there.
Exactly. So let's think about what's happened over the past, let's call it 100 years. There was war, there's been famine, there's been the Great Depression, like that. I
got news for you. It's also still currently going on. It's just not in our backyard.
Still going on. But globally, we are in a place as a whole where we have more abundance than we know what to do with. I have actually posited that I believe we're, as a society, in a place of global self-actualization, which is the highest climb. Like, what is purpose and who am I? And the top of it is actually transcendence. If you actually look at the true Maslow's hierarchy. But with each of those things, like the bottom of that, below self-actualization, is all survival based. Self-actualization is thriving. What does it mean to live? And what you brought up, you were quite astute with that. It was don't die, don't die, don't die. And every decision you made was in a very structured, rigid, hey, we got to go. This is what it is. But we didn't integrate the who am I into that. And I think that's one of the big challenges of right now. There's, name the millions of types of different groups out there right now, but we're trying to jump into each new group identity as opposed to like, wait, who are you and what do you stand for? And then that is, to me, that's the soul. When that platform is solid and you know who you are, and then you want to know where you're going, the in between, the how much food should I eat and everything else, I'll associate it with sports. It's, let's call it, I'm a basketball player and my goal is to win the championship. Cool. What do I need to do from there? Well, I need to train this many times a week. I need to eat these types of foods. They become obvious because it's in lockstep with the identity you have. Everything else is just noise, and you can recognize it. But when you're so distracted because you don't know what your foundation, your spiritual identity, your soul, you don't know how to define it for yourself, because you're the one who has to show up in all the different realms of your life, whether it be your business, your family life, and your relationship with your own body. If you don't know what that is, you don't know how to put yourself into a training mode. You don't know how to integrate a lifestyle. And that's very difficult because you have to first make space and say, wait, who am I?
Yeah.
Let me sit with that. That's scary.
And it's what's interesting too, I want to give a little bit of a, info break here. NakedSundayStudios.com. That's where you host your podcast, where you have really cool guests and you really do a deep dive on a lot of this stuff. And what I think is super important, no matter across kind of the spiritual channels, is something's happening here. Something's happening where we are paying attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it. We are paying attention to these things. And like for me, and you can call it maturity, but I think it's kind of going across the board. You have the sensitivities of GMOs, you have the sensitivities of, raw vegetables. On every retreat, the number one thing that I look forward to on the retreat, including the people that I'm going with, is the food, because I know I'm kind of forced to not eat crap, right? And I went on one retreat, it was all vegan. And let me tell you something, I dropped 12 pounds. I drank magic water, Dr. Emoto's magic water out there, divine water. And, whether I'm in Sedona or Shasta, or I've got news on something else coming up, I'm going to tease it now. But, when I go away, the food is actually a really big primary concern for me, because I know that I can it's part of my spiritual reset. Do you find people want to do a spiritual reset on a regular basis? And what does that look like to you from a fitness standpoint?
Yes. I mean, the classic is like, I want to go on some detox or some fast. I'm big into fasting. I enjoy it. I've done different types of fasts. I've done juice fasts. I've done water fasts. My personal favorite is actually water fasts. And it's not from a food perspective. It could be, I think it was similar to the idea of Lent. You're going to remove a distraction, something that you're consuming. And I would even take it back a step. You go, your existential empty calories. It could be your social media. It could be the news cycle. It could be whatever the thing that is just leaving you feeling overwhelmed and anxiety and having anxiety all the time.
Yeah.
When you peel that back, we usually don't realize we're using those as distractions to numb ourselves out from the deeper questions.
Yeah.
And that I do find people feel a calling, but you have to feel like this pressure. There's a pressure of like, something doesn't feel right. If I keep going this way, I'm gonna blow up. Yeah. And that's when they go, I'm ready for a reset. And something as simple as auditing yourself, taking yourself one day a week, like that actually was the premise of Naked Sunday inadvertently when I started doing it. It was, I just sat by myself. I happened to just be butt naked all day long and just,
I mean, come on.
Hey, why not?
I mean, you didn't follow my suggestion.
That starts tripping down on the show. YouTube would ban us.
It's my channel, and I need the ratings. I've dipped a little bit. My regards, Malta. And by the way, so somebody somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean right now is going, finally, Brandon, finally.
We're taking the show to the next level.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm a bit of a tease.
It's that pause, though.
But I like that idea of kind of like stripping away something where it's, I also think that when you, and I went through this, we talked about this, where I didn't just like go cold turkey on any one particular thing, except for maybe, like soft drinks and soda. Like that's probably the one thing where I'm just like, that's damaging stuff. That's like, stuff of a, that's a diabetic coma waiting to happen. Instead, like aside from that, it would be like everything became a moderation game for me. Everything came in that. And I didn't look at it as like a reward-based thing, like, oh, if I'm really good and I only consume, so many calories, then tomorrow I can do the binge and get the cheeseburger. I think food as a reward is actually kind of has negative connotation. I look at it more like as in like I need to kind of have a dance with this. I need to kind of have certain things where then, and this is a shout out to the people that always say, oh, I just can't drink water. It is one of those things that I just start laughing when they're like, oh yeah, I can't drink water. Hey, Susan, how are you? It's funny because like everything, you're based in water. You're not feeling well. The number one reason for heart attacks, I mean, after you get through the technical, chemical, and blockage reasons, is because of, and the reason why you throw a clot, the reason why you that blockage manifests itself is because you're dehydrated, because your veins are closed. Like there's a survival piece to this. And I want to back up a little bit and show, Kelly, thanks so much for tuning in again. The stress of being afraid of every taboo food. What's a taboo food? Like, I love this topic, by the way. Is it kind of like you put on your garters or you sit naked on your couch all day on a Sunday and be like, this is a taboo food. And before it touches my lips, it touches my, all right, go ahead. What's a taboo food? By the way, what an intro. I'm such a good interviewer.
This is good. Well, I remember when that message popped up there, when I was talking about the fear and the stress, and it's the dogmas and the religious ideologies that surround the food cultures. So, if the name your, somebody's gonna get upset, by the way, like veganism or carnivore or paleo or name your thing, keto, they're all isms, and there's not asking about gray area. Now, there's value to each of these things, and it depends on what tools you're using them for. It's when you get into that all or nothing thing and notice the cult followings that come behind them, that's where the notion of the flexible diet came in. And I get a little bit like, you can go even one step further, because I think people look at it too much as nutrition.
Yeah.
Diet is actually, the common term is bastardized version of deus or dias. That's a Greek or Latin term meaning way of life,
Way of
hence
life, yeah.
lifestyle.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
taboo, notice how these things that go, this is bad, sugar's bad, meat is bad, vegetables are bad. Name whatever thing is bad for the day because of some study that somebody found a way to curate to usually fit their ideology. Now you're like, oh, when everything is bad, then what's good? And then you throw your hands up, you're like, well, I'm going to die anyway because apparently everything's bad. It's the give up on yourself, because you're left without any good options. And we're not looking for good options. We're looking for what's better. So say somebody, for this idea, like we'll say soda's bad, okay, quote unquote, as opposed to saying soda's bad or artificial sweeteners are bad. What's somebody's first goal? Well, I want to start losing some weight. I know that I need to have some less calories. So instead of normal soda or regular soda, I'm going to have a diet soda because I'm going to consume less calories. Cool. I'm going to start there, as opposed to I'm going to make this massive shift that I don't know how to deal with the rest of it. That you brought up moderation before. That's actually how you start this slow process of moderation. What we're really usually struggling with is the fear of judgment from somebody else looking at you, be like, well, that's not right. That's not the best way. Well, compared to what?
Yeah, the old judgment thing. And this is kind of the whole conversation about creating your own standard. And it's funny because whenever I talk about anything from, I'm currently working with, a couple dozen mediums, developing mediums, and some of them are a little bit new and some of them are a little more developed and active and that sort of thing. I just go back to one thing, and that is your routine, because you can't control the stressors of an environment. You can't control that, like when you show up to somebody's house or an event or even a reading in your own controlled space, you can't always, deal with certain with certain stressors, right? But you can always control yourself. You can always come in and give your mantra, your prayer, your blessing. You can always close down. You can always put your best foot forward and explain what's going to happen. When it comes to diet, I mean, that's actually, to me, part of the routine. Like I said, I have a routine. I know what I'm eating today. I know I'm playing that in my head. Where on the days that are awful, I'm here to tell you, those are the days where, like, I show up and I'm like, oh, I hope I can grab something later. Like, that is so awful for me because I'm starving, I'm angry, I'm hangry, I'm like Betty White, in those Snickers commercials. Like, we should do a Snickers commercial. That would be so funny. It's like, you're acting like Brandon, and then you like eat a Snickers, and then you're like,
here, grab a Snickers.
Yeah, Caleb sits up. And then he's like, dude, that's so like, oh yeah, I feel so much better here. And then we can get Donnie to be a Pagoda.
I think you're bringing up a great.
Not paying attention.
You're bringing up a great point though here. Like when you talk about routine, what I heard in that is that you're making a routine of making space, and I don't. Making space is not very sexy at all. It's like you're going to sit and kind of have a buffer of nothing. Yes, that's exactly what you're doing, because that's preventative. And you said it perfectly. You don't know the environment you're walking to. People might be going sideways in there. They're going to go
every
crazy.
Day, dude. Every day.
Every day.
Have you been a medium on Halloween? I can show you the text.
I can imagine it's wild.
I can show you the messages. It's insane. I do not work on Halloween.
It started writing it down, right?
Oh my gosh. Writing it down. I have a book.
A new book. Seriously, just for that? Like, Halloween from a medium?
I'll pull it out next time we have our guys' night. It's so funny because it's like they're kind of fun and they're funny and listen, anybody who's ever reached out to me know that I have empathy and compassion, but when you get 500 things, like literally tens and 20 like messages at a time about things that you're just like, I can't wrap my head around this. I laugh about it, not to laugh at you, but rather to be like, okay, I can only take so much. Like, and that's why I focus in on my core group. And that's why I'm like, okay, if you guys have something, like, okay, here you go. And actually you can kind of start to do your steps here to kind of get involved with what I do around here. By the way, I'm gonna do a little self-promotion right now. Are you okay with that? Are you fine with that? Because I'm gonna kind of go, oh, look at this. All of a sudden I change it to me. I do one of these, a couple of those, and then all of a sudden I start talking about my weekly bee, which, by the way, is a really convenient class that I teach every single week. We go over one aspect of astrology so you're not overwhelmed. We go over a couple of tarot cards so you're not overwhelmed. And then we talk about a topic every single week so you're not overwhelmed. It's an hour in and out, give or take a few minutes. There's a little participation, but by and large, it is designed for you to be able to listen to it wherever you go at some point during the week. It does accompany some things like some exercises, some meditation. I'm holding back a little bit on that because I'm going to actually be rolling out a meditation level to this as well. Hang on, everybody, you're going to enjoy it. But right now, just go to the website, tbrandonross.com. You can get involved with that there. And let's not forget, we also have the Tarot Club, which is not only do you get the weekly B, but you also get a couple of tarot classes where we have seasoned veterans come in and talk to you about tarot class, myself and a few others that give you guidance, give you practice, and help you along in the practicality for you to work with tarot on a regular basis, whether it be for yourself or to develop yourself as a professional. We are a professional track around here. It's actually more or less a leadership model by and large. And what I've actually found to be really cool about the groups that I'm working with right now is I'm finding a lot of people finding like personal value and stuff. And that's why I think you're kind of like such a timely guest, because I think a lot of people, when you start to go on this journey, I mean, the first thing that I did was the obvious. I'm like, okay, I weigh too much. Like, I can't get on the roller coaster. True story. I'm at Great Escape and I'm like, I can't get on the Comet. Like, literally, I'm like wedging myself in there. And the guy goes, I can't balance. It wasn't so much I couldn't fit. I got myself in there and he goes, great. He goes, I can't balance you on it. And I went, like, I'm affecting everything. Like, you know, I had that conscious Jupiter moment where it's like, I'm kind of a big guy in here, you know, like it doesn't matter. And some of it was like self-deprecating, but some of it was also like, you know, this is on my mind for a while and I want to change. What do you think the biggest change is for people? Like, what's the biggest like thing that goes, bam, I got to change? What makes people change?
I mean, I think there's usually a thing that was easy to do that all, much like you just said, oh, I couldn't get on the ride, or I went up the stairs and I can't breathe. There's going to be some type of sign or symptom of burnout, especially if we're going to go physical. The easy stuff is like, I've got chronic pain, there's the weight, I don't feel comfortable in my clothes, I'm out of breath doing the things that I wanted to do, what have you. If it's in relationships, when we start talking about that, there's friction at home, you're tired, you're cranky, just things might be on edge. At work, you might be lighting off at your staff, you might have a down sales month, you might feel that chronic like physical anxiety within yourself. There's usually a moment where you're kind of teetering on the edge, and sometimes it comes from some like the classic like mouths of babe thing. A kid will say something and you're like or somebody will just say something and it stings. I think the biggest shift that everybody must make eventually though is you've until you decide you're going to have this be you're not going to make the actual changes you need to make, in that being making it a sustainable process, until you shift your inner language from that of self-deprecation, self-loathing, self-hatred into that of self-love. We got the love thing behind that. And one of my quotes I always talk about is, you can't hate your way into loving yourself. And that is so important, because if you're not loving and compassionate to yourself, that's going to pour out into everything you do. If you are operating from hate, you're going to go right back into rushing the process. You're not going to build the foundation you need to do. You did a pun intended. You're talking about how you were created the tarot cards and the weekly club was about making it digestible. Again, pun intended, is digestible. Somebody can actually consume this, understand it, develop an awareness, and ultimately become more confident in their own ability to read what's going on. If you don't take that time because you're operating from that inner hate, guess what? You're coming back to it.
And you know, I was actually doing the exact same thing that every other, you know, tarot teacher was doing, or astrology teacher was doing, and that is, look at how much I know. Let me give this to you in what I feel is convenient over 4 months or over 4 weeks, and you shove it down their throat. You know, week 1, major arcana. Week 2, wands and cups. Week 3, pentacles and swords. Week 4, spreads. Week 5, practice. Week 6, you're done. And it's just like, that's a lot of shit. And what I started to realize, first of all, it was a differentiation move, right? Because you start to say, like, okay, why am I built differently? Part of the, I'm actually preaching out there, oh, you've got to do this on a regular basis. Well, how do you make that commitment? Well, for $77 a month, you can be involved with all of this stuff and not worry about it. If you just want the classes, it's $44 a month. So, and by the way, nominal fees in the scheme of things, you got $11 a class. This is actually pretty reasonable, guys, right? You're getting world-class coaching and people that do this professionally on a regular basis. Like, there's value to it. End of commercial. But for me, it was kind of like I had to do it differently because I realized, like, what's valuable to somebody. I actually put myself in my own shoes 15 years ago when I started doing this work. What did I need? What was the stuff I would have bought? What is the stuff I would have gotten myself involved with? And, I've got Susan's quote up here. Diet is what you surround yourself with. Totally. I agree, and includes social media, news, etc. One of the most toxic relationships you have in your life is with your phone. Do you ever get that, like, notification, like your screen time thing, and then it says to you, you picked up the phone every 4 minutes, and I'm like, I fucking slept for 6.5 hours. That's an alarming rate.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it might take into account, like, I don't know if it goes minus, we're going to do this on an 18-hour schedule, and you still picked it up every 4 minutes. I'm now currently at 18 minutes, which is, I don't know what healthy is, but I feel a lot better. I'm sorry if I'm not texting you back right away. I'm sorry if you're getting a text back from me at 10 o'clock at night when I'm finally kind of like shutting down right before I kind of go, hey, how you doing? And it's one of those things. And, Susan, I think you really bring up a great point here because, diet is all of that. Like, how do you integrate that stuff? Like, we want to use technology for good.
Yeah.
What do you see in it?
Great question. The biggest thing I think of here, I think of this as the mental health component of this, and that is actually your time management. So the funny thing you brought up right there, hey, my phone told me I'm on it this much time.
Yeah.
We as a society are not actually very aware of how we're spending our time. And it's an investment. And often that's also where your money is going. So when people say they don't got the money for stuff, go check your bank account and go check your time. Both those things are going to be pointing towards the same thing. And that's the underlying thing, is that we're just not actually aware. Most people don't realize that the skill of developing self-awareness is already hard enough to develop, and you have to know where to look. So one of the first things you can look at is just your calendar or a tool like on your phone of saying, hey, this was my screen time. And where was I spending it? You feel a certain way. Now, knowing how from there you can make new changes. My social media nowadays is actually pretty enjoyable. I've specifically curated what I want to see. I have things that are motivational, things that are educational. I put away most of the nonsense. Like, I eliminated the distractions, and the algorithm, go figure, wants me to stay on there more. So it continues to feed me things that are, in my mind, nourishing my heart and my mind for when I want to be on there. But again, you can also set boundaries. So what we're talking about here is very much, we use social media, but being intentional about your relationships. How much quality time are you spending with the right relationships, the people that espouse your values and share the same goals? How much quality time you're spending on the work that drives you, that inspires you, the classic term of ikigai, of what's your purpose? And then also, how much time are you spending with your self-care? What is that? Most people have not even sat and looked at their calendar and be like, oh, that's why I feel this way. I have filled my life up with one distraction to the next. I gotta rushing the kids around, do all that. Never building the buffer into their schedule. As you and I, like more appointment-based kind of stuff. Most people don't even put a 5-minute buffer between appointments. Do that so you can transition your energy from one appointment to the next. All of a sudden you feel so much better. And go figure, you don't pour that energy from one to the next. You don't pour that into your marriage at home. You don't pour that into your.
It's a spiritual hygiene thing too.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is the reason why we smudge. This is the reason why we meditate. This is the reason why we have mantras. This is the reason why we bring that stuff in. I just want to bring up a few things in the chat. That there's some thing Marnie actually brings up, the discipline of it, and it's boundaries. I mean, whenever you hear the word discipline, it's actually about boundaries. How do you boundary that up? How do you say, hey, whatever? And by the way, I do have that very stupid game on my phone that when I'm ready to like kick back, chill out, put my feet up for a few minutes and do something mindless, I will sit there and, take out the garden or whatever the hell it is that, they're trying to make you do, right? And you notice that, like, when you start to pay attention to some of those boundaries are an accelerant in spiritual work. And here's what I mean by that. If you are trying to please everybody all the time, you're a people pleaser and you're bleeding your energy everywhere. If you focus your energy into a few particular buckets, you end up filling those buckets as opposed to always trying to, like, just a few drops in each one of them, which really don't amount to much, and you can't even pour them together after you separate them like that. So the energetic value of boundary setting is that you can say, you can have a focus, you can have a realistic point of view, so you can get to where it is you need to be. I think everything spiritual should actually be mission based. I really do. I preach it a lot. And one of the things that you said about, like, your mission, where you're like, okay, I'm pretty good at listening, I'm pretty good at application, I'm pretty good at peeling back the layers so that we get to the core of it. When you start to work with somebody, what's the aha moment? Like, what are the really cool aha moments that you've seen over the years?
Nowadays, one of the things that inspires me the most is how into the conversation around core values people are. That one, more than anything, it surprised me. I thought I was the only one, because I call it the anti-value method. I've done more core value exercises than I can care to recount. Right. And I'll give you the kind of dumbed down version of what most of them that I've done are, and forgive me if you've heard it, and forgive me if it worked for you, because if it did, awesome. But most of them are, here's a list of somebody else's words. They all sound really nice, and you try to whittle it down to like 5.
What is your core value? Don't tell me what Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, that sort of thing. All great influences, but what are you taking from it there?
Bingo. Right. So I was like, they and don't get me wrong, they leave you feeling good. It's close enough, but you really start to be like, I chose these when you're really honest about it. I chose these because I feel like my friends and the people I'm around think I'm cool. And not that they're bad, but it's a close of an approximation you currently have at that time. And I realized it never hit the nail on the head. So tapping into more of my physiology and health background, I was like, well, how do I fix this? And the premise of the anti-value method is when you start to think about, it's easy to pick out what you don't like. I ask somebody in coaching all the time, so what do you want? You ask that question, you will get 7 things about what they don't want before they even maybe broach the topic of what they do want, because it's hard to say what you do care about. So instead of seeing that as the enemy, I was like, well, how do we leverage this? We are physiologically, we're hardwired to detect threats. So the things that are negative in our life, survival mode, we're tapping into that. Yeah. So with this, when I described it, I was like, well, just what pisses you off? And you come to something almost instantaneously. I'm sure anybody who's listening is like, I know something that pisses me off. For me, it was like table manners and not holding the door, saying please and
chewing with your mouth,
all that kind of shit.
Talking, breathing.
And what those were
piss me off regularly, actually.
Love you tons. Because we love each other. For me, those were signs of
that cornbread.
I give it to you or Donnie. To me, it was like a sign of disrespect, of like, I love you, man. I love you.
Donnie can get his own cornbread.
He can get his own cornbread. But that was, once I saw that, I was like, oh, well, that's my anti-value. Now what's the exact opposite? Yeah. There was my value. And the difference was, like, it hit me in the gut.
Yeah.
I could not unsee it. And it was my own words. It was my own visualization. It was my own understanding. It wasn't anybody else's. And that got me super clear. And the cool part is, as you start to lay out your core values, I believe if you define your identity by your core values, now you know how to be authentic, because your core values show up everywhere you go. You show up everywhere you go. And that, when people saw that, like, oh, this is simple. Now it takes some time to integrate that, because you brought up a great point of boundaries.
I think from realization to implementation is sometimes where all the magic happens.
Takes forever.
I mean, that really is that process. And that's why, like, for me, I always go back to the process, because once you discover this, you got to figure out what you're going to do with it. Like, it's almost like, I think so many people on a spiritual journey work so hard at the identification, but they never do a damn thing about it. It's like, oh, I have this toxic parent. And then they're like, ta-da! And then they walk around with this badge of honor of the toxic parent. And by the way, self included, I had to call myself out on some of my own, like, oh, I just noticed this about myself. I'm gregarious, outgoing, and that's just kind of like, you just have to accept it. Well, I had to learn that sometimes that's not incredible, that's not the most appropriate behavior, like say at a wake, like, hey, everybody, it's Shecky Russ. And by the way, it's like, it's like, hey, here's the worst thing that's going to happen. We'll bring him back today. It's like, no, actually, there's a dead person in a coffin. Let's not go there, Brandon. Like, it was hysterical, incredibly funny. I love Lucy style. But on the flip side of that, like, you also, even when you identify like your character traits and your core values, you still have to find an applicable thing to it. And that's also why so many people talk about their tribe. They talk about that thing where they can have their I'm going to pull a line out of the news, the generally accepted spiritual practices, or GASP as I call it. That's fantastic. I should really write a book.
There you go.
Generally accepted spiritual practices. My gosh, go ahead. Somebody get writing that. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, great. You've just identified that you have a superpower. When do you apply it? Okay, great. You just identified that you have a healing dynamic that could actually learn from it and you can teach others. Great. How are you going to apply it? That journey part of it, I think, is so critically important for who and how we become after our discoveries. And that's why the fitness part of it is so important.
Well, yeah,
because it bridges routine.
Well, yeah, you look at a fit person or somebody who's taking care of their health, it teaches you a lot of things.
I'm a beacon.
It's sexy, and that's important for also people to recognize everybody's somewhere on their journey. Like at one of my old
Meet them
gyms,
Meet them where they're at.
One of our number one sales guys he had lost, I think he lost almost 200 pounds. On the surface, maybe most people wouldn't see that but he was surrounded by a community of like, why would he be here selling first? Well, because he was a product of it. So I think that's some people need to start dropping the ego part of don't judge the book by its cover, because you don't know the journey of what they got to here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the important part here is, and I love what you're bringing up, once you define this, now what are you doing about it? Well, once you have your core values, you have to actually look in the mirror first. Most people, you said, they blame their mom or their dad. Okay, well, you know what? How about you go check in the mirror first? Are you upholding your values first? And the simple thing, more often than not, it could easily be health. And we have to start asking ourselves, you talked about being mission-based before, which I loved. Your body is the vehicle which you're going to carry that mission out in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So if that ain't okay. In
this lifetime, I love that. So you're talking soul contract stuff. Really?
Yeah. And if people don't,
really do.
If you don't rectify your relationship with your body, you are going to shorten that timeline and you're going to have less time to pour into your mission. What would another 5, 10, 15, 20 years do for you if you actually were clear on who you are, your body was capable of carrying out the tasks, you had the mental space and the mental capacity and the relationships to go with it that echoed and mirrored and held you accountable to what you say you care about? That takes time, but it's worth it. Like we're sitting here having these kinds of conversations right now because those things become the amplifier. But if your body is not sound, and that's because it's housing the stuff, your mental clarity, your physical fitness, they go hand in hand. And people can argue it until the end of time, but it does. And when you can feel good in your body, I've yet to meet somebody who goes on a physical transformation journey that does not find deeper relationships, better relationships, or find greater success in their career, however that may look. And you won't know where that's going, but that transformation, it's a beautiful mirror of, I'm valuing this vehicle. This has been a profound gift of life that I've been given, and you're sharing that with the world. I think there's something really beautiful and profound in that. NakedSundayStudios.com. You're going to go there, click on the like and subscribe and all that other stuff. He's on every one of the majors, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, all that other good stuff. And you're going to catch me on one of those future episodes. Do I have to be naked? And does it have to be Sunday? We'll record it. And it's more about being naked emotionally and authentically. That's what it is.
But thanks for the definition. You just ruined it. I'm out.
I did it for you. Well,
there we go.
If we want to strip down, fuck it. I'm here for
it. It's mostly audio anyways. But listen, speaking of which, we've gotten to know Caleb a little bit here. Let's really do a deep dive.
Hey.
And
go.
Let's
go.
This is a part where, by the way, I'm the third leading reason for divorce in upstate New York. We're going to actually take a look at his chart now. You know, what is the most interesting thing about his chart? And I want to make sure we kind of get your face kind of in an up close here, and then we're gonna wrap up with 5 good minutes where I pepper you with a whole bunch of silly but very authentic questions.
Yes.
And we just kind of go with things hard. And by the way, thank you guys so much for all about your contributions here. Susan, thanks so much. Wendy, good to see you in here. Marnie, let's see. Oh gosh, we got a few people all over the place. Kelly, Latoya, Trish, thank you guys for tuning in. Debbie, you guys are fantastic. All right, guys, here we go. So I'm going to be an astrologer for a few minutes. And oh, is this big enough? How about if we go a little bit here? Oh, there we go. That's really what people want to see. People love Joanne. Thanks so much. Stick around. We're going to be talking here. So right out of the gate, you know, first of all, being this Aquarius. You're kind of an Aquarius asshole, really, when you get right down to it. Like when I see this chart, I'm like, okay, so we're Aquarius, we are a Capricorn rising, which, by the way, if you're looking for somebody as a health coach, I'm going to tell you why you're so good with the fitness coach part of it, is because, first of all, Chiron sits in your 6th house, which is about how your personal routines kind of come in. You have a journey of personal healing connected to this. So that, you know, that's sitting here right in the 6th house is pretty fantastic. And we have a grand trine with your south node in Libra. By the way, you're going through your nodal return right now, just to let you know, because the nodes are moving through Aries and Libra, but it's actually flipped. So you're actually going through your oppositional return in your nodals. But that just means that you are very simply connected. Actually, no, that's not true. It's actually a true nodal return. It is, without a doubt, you are very comfortable with finding balance with things, and you're right in the middle. You're just short of the 15 degree there, which means that you're naturally about teaching people in your 9th house how to find balance. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I like learning
Holy
this
shit,
stuff.
It's in your chart.
There we go.
It's in your chart. And
it's
again,
written in the stars,
born on a new moon. You know, you are literally within seconds of a full new moon where, you know, the moon's not actually visible, which means that it's actually, the moon is actually pretty naked. Just to let you know. Because right here with the moon, I'm pointing this out to Caleb, the moon and the sun together, this is a new moon. Do you know that?
I did not.
You were born in a new moon, which, by the way, this creates that trine that I'm talking about here, which means that your naked existence helps people heal with their routine, and you literally help them find balance. Holy shit, everybody.
Wow.
Kind of cool, right?
I don't know if you know this, but this kind of happened naturally. My logo is supposed to have a little bit of an eclipse kind of vibe to it, and you can see the pink and the blue with that. Masculine, feminine, balance, harmony.
Where did I say eclipse in any of this? Everybody goes to the eclipse. They think it's a big thing. They go Bonnie Tyler on fucking everything. What is that?
Well, maybe it's just the moon and it's all those other things hidden behind. There you go. It's partial.
That's totally busting your balls now. But that's kind of cool, though. Well, the moon thing would kind of make sense. And for you, if you wanted to leave like a little bit of a sliver because you're at, you know, 6 and 8 degrees here, there's a little bit of light, but it would be a super shadow onto this. You know, the other things that are super interesting here is that you're also about communication. You know, you have Vesta sitting in here and Mars, so your passion, you know, with Aries is, first of all, you don't know how to not work. Like, what was your first job? Like, you were like 12, 13?
No.
I mean, you were part of that cult. I haven't asked anything about
part of it. We could talk about it if you want. No, my first job was actually college.
Okay.
I didn't, or end of high school. My parents said, you know what, when I was in high school, I treated my sports and my school like it was my job. And they said, that's what we want you to focus on. And I did. And it's interesting we're talking about this because for whatever it is, I know how to just plug into that.
Yeah.
Again, we just talked about it on the chart there, but that's me. Once I have that clarity of focus, I just drop in and there's no wiggle room. It's tunnel vision. I can do that for myself. I've had to learn the communication side of it because I used to get very dogmatic. Clearly, I learned how to be a good little cult follower, but I learned how to pull myself out. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go here with this. You know, I'm pointing out the 3rd house here, house communication with Mars. Like, you get really kind of ardent when you start to kind of like fine, you didn't really have a job, but you're saying that sports were your job. And guess what? You were probably training 12, 15 hours a day sometimes, right?
I train a lot. Yeah, it
Yep.
was
So that's kind of
known
driven in
for it.
this.
Yeah.
But you were a learning mechanism here.
Yes.
You know, having Vesta in conjunct here is a super important thing, because that also you talk like a teacher. You talk like a teacher. Like literally that's what it translates to, and you're ardent about it. Now, over here in the 12th house, this is kind of fun, right? So your cusp here on the first house being a Capricorn, you are a low angle Capricorn. You're at 2 degrees, which means your 12th house is primarily Sagittarius. By the way, this is where you get a lot of your intuitive stuff here. So the 3 intuitive houses are the 4th, 8th, and 12th. The 4th house, you're void. That doesn't mean anything wrong. It just means that you're not really pulling on like family values to find your intuition. Your 8th house, you're not really externalizing this. You don't really subscribe to a lot of guruism or any of that other stuff, which, by the way, based on everything you just talked about, it's kind of in your chart. And then into the 12th house, this is kind of creating your own dynamic. And by the way, you have been your worst enemy from time to time. You have also been your greatest champion from time to time. Being that in Sagittarius is that when you kind of get it, you're like, oh my gosh, you might be a little impulsive at times because you do have Uranus in here in conjunct with Venus. But let me tell you something: if you saw somebody you liked, you're gonna kind of do that connection, right? Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
When my gut hits,
put your pants back on.
Hey yo.
There we go. But with Saturn also in Sagittarius, you also learn that it makes you quick on your feet. It makes you kind of, be discerning at the end of the day to be like, okay, should I just because I can do this, should I do it, right? You can start to kind of build that in, a little more mature energy as you go along here. But in the 12th house, this is a highly spiritual house, insofar that it could also be the house of your undoing. So you could get where I'm saying, hey, you're not into guruism. You could fall for fads. You could fall for leaders that are just kind of like, hey, I'm super excited about this. I'm going to go follow this guy. Yeah, I shaved my head. I'm handing out poppy seeds. Like, you could kind of go down that path, but then you could also say, I'm going to create a culture. This is actually a cultural position when you see this kind of stellium here, because it's going to be unusual. It's going to be counterculture. It's going to be based in reality, right? And even though Neptune is sitting there into your first house, that is also another indication of high intuition. And fortunately for you, it's far enough away from the sun that you're almost a full house away, really, even though it's in your first house. Your Neptune dreaminess is also, this allows you to kind of use a lot of creativity in business, in your thought process, as well as how you want to approach different things. And it is opposite your Chiron, which is a really kind of, your Saturn and your Chiron are in opposition of one another, which sometimes could be challenging for you to kind of get there. But once you get there, there's a lot of rooted foundation. But then again, I mean, I have a book and a YouTube channel, and I travel the world. I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that there?
Especially that I had somebody else talk to me about their 12th health stuff once, and she stopped on it. She was like, this is interesting. A lot of this work is around spiritual work and all those things. But you may have brought up a good point. I definitely like certain flashy things, and I've dropped into certain dogmatic things, and I've learned that. But I think the value in what you talked about, and I've had to learn the hard way how to mature into that and start to discern and make space. And hence why I've shared a lot of things I shared with today about learning how to make the space before just doing like a little double check on my gut. Like, make sure, hey, it felt right. There were some things that got you excited, but maybe you didn't look at the whole picture. Take a step back and zoom out. That was something that was important. And to be completely blunt, like, one of my greatest fears is to become a cult leader myself. So like making sure I put myself around the right people.
I love your work in NXIVM.
My wife, yeah, I live like down the road from where it was.
Did you really?
Dude, it's right there.
Let's just get interested.
Yeah.
So they kind of they tried to recruit me.
Did they really?
Oh my fucking God. Yeah. So they wanted to recruit me. And again, this is when I was at like my denouement. Like I was pushing 430, whatever. And super attractive woman is just like, hey, so have you ever thought about like doing like leadership work? Like you're an incredible leader in your eyes. And I'm like, yeah, but like 450 pounds. Like I was like, you forgot my eyes are up here for once. It's my joke in my shows, but yeah, so I went and I attended one of the things, and it was a luncheon, and yeah, it was like $75 for the luncheon. And I'm like, all right, this is a little pricey, but price of admission, whatever. And basically, it was like it was a pitch for sure. And I just felt like I was at if you've ever sat through a timeshare pitch where they're talking all about, they just feature benefit, feature benefit, feature benefit, and they never get to the price until you get down there. But then the price actually gets presented by one of these, Price is Right models that come around, and they're just like, hey, how are you doing? And then they're like, you have a lot of potential here with us. You could really get up. Do you think you could see yourself presenting some of our topics? And I'm like, wow, this could be a career choice. And then they're like, there's a lot of benefits behind the scenes, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, what, do I have to get a tattoo or something? And she went, maybe. And I'm like, oh, you mean like, meanwhile, I was intuitively picking up the fact that they were branding half of them, and that they were going down this kind of like subtle, like seedy path of like, let's just point out everything that's wrong with the world. And oh, by the way, at the end of the day, and by the way, the challenge that I actually had with it wasn't the fact that I thought that Rainier was a douche, and he was, but it was the part that I didn't think that their model was actually leadership. I thought it was insert another quarter to get more things. And I'm like, I've seen this before. I've seen this before. And I realized it was really based in like what Scientology did.
Mm.
Like, how did you kind of had this kind of, cult conversation before.
Yeah.
How much do you want to share about this? Like,
I'll talk about it all day.
What were you raised in? Like, what did you see?
I grew up in the Moonies, and that's kind of like the common culture within it.
Wait, what is it?
The Moonies. That's kind of commonly known as.
Oh, so I'm sitting here and I'm talking about shaving your head and handing out flowers. And
yeah, that was a thing. My mom like literally had a flower stand. It was during, was it like Eastern time? She had that then. Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know what the Moonies are, also known as, more formally known as the Unification Church.
Yeah.
They were very commonly known for was their mass weddings. So my parents are in the Guinness Book of World Record for largest mass wedding. They were married in Madison Square Garden, and they were arranged marriages. So it was like you and you, yeah, you're gonna go talk, like that's gonna be the thing.
Wow, you still won the genetic lottery that you're in right now?
I mean,
that's pretty good, man. Like, like that, somebody knew what they were doing. I mean, at least, it's kind of like saying, well, at least the trains run on time in Germany. No. I mean, it's like, you kind of won the lottery there.
Can't say I didn't benefit in some ways, but
okay, all right, so it's not all bad.
No, and the other side of it is, a lot of people get really angry about their childhood and all those things, and for a long time I was quite resentful. But I'm at a place in my life when I realized I kept banging my head against the wall. I'm not breaking through things. Like, I had to learn, like the kryptonite to that frustration, that banging head against the wall, was the gratitude for what it actually taught me. In my life, I've been able to see what these rigid dogmas can be. And for me, the way it impacted me internally was, I was supposed to have an arranged marriage myself. When I unraveled it, I was like, oh, the highest form of love, in my opinion, of being able to experience love in a marriage and whatnot, was dictated on somebody else's terms, not on mine. It wasn't part of my journey, and I wasn't even integrated into the conversation. And that type of control was a real problem for me. And I see that as very scarcity based. And thankfully, I got to see the ramifications of that firsthand, and I get to feel it in my own life. I get to also see how I became what I despised at a certain point. And if I hadn't gone through that early, I'd probably still, in some low level thing with a little power under me, would be dictating the same thing. And a lot of people do that. They're not even aware about how they become their own tyrant, and they become the tyrant that they despise in ways that they don't realize. So I'm actually quite grateful that I could see, not only, I also saw the power of change, and I saw the power of community, and it can be very powerful, but you have to be careful of how you wield it. And in many ways, if you're offloading your spiritual actualization to somebody else, to some person, it's like, that's not the way this goes. You have to go introspect, and you have to have that conversation with yourself, and whatever, divine kind of conversation you like to ascribe yourself to. And I think that that's important, that I was able to see that, because I could see the dogma, the rigidity, and there's value to it. But when you look at any religion, There's a lot of similar segments. There's some fasting, as in like remove yourself from distractions. There's some different practices. There's prayer. There's meditation of some sort, or something like that. And there's these routines, as you brought up earlier, that help you, let's call it cleanse the soul, remove the distractions to sit with the divine in some way, shape, or form. And it happens to be a way, but you have to start to be able to find what's your way. And sometimes meditation is not like sit and cross-legged and ohms. It might be
meditation is the most misunderstood in this spiritual thing. It's actually the most common form of spiritual bypassing, because you're like, well, I'm meditating, why am I not manifesting? Well, because what are you doing it for the right reasons, right? Are you finding enlightenment for the right reasons? And the thing I really like about everything that you were just talking about is creating your own standard. Like, this is how you got there. You got there to teach people how to build their own standard, because you're like, I just came from this, from the biggest wedding ever made, ever done, which, by the way, everybody, I do weddings. So I always joke around about that. I still do.
We might have to what's the word?
Co-officiate,
because I've officiated a couple weddings myself. So
have you really?
Yeah, I officiated my sisters and my baby brothers.
Oh, that's kind of cool. So why don't you call her your older sister?
Well, she's younger than me, but like my baby brother,
so
he's the youngest.
Your baby sister.
She's my baby sister too.
Baby sister, baby brother.
Yeah. Well, I have a middle brother too, so I guess I kind of just the way for me to clarify what it was.
Forget the middle brother. The middle brother. Who cares about the middle brother? And by the way, if the middle brother is watching this right now, thank you. You're one of 7 people. Second of all, I think the conversation too is about, we could go down a whole other rabbit hole about all the things of like, how did you come to, do some of these things, and, and that sort of thing. When you start to live a very conscious life, you literally have the process in place where you go, does this serve me? Does this work for me? And guess what? Sometimes you're like, I don't know if it'll work for me, but I'm willing to take a chance. I'm not aware that this is going to be, go great or go poorly. It doesn't matter though. I'm up for the adventure. One of the most powerful things that I've ever had in just relationship, not even like that, but just interaction with somebody, is I kept thinking that they had an expectation of me that I couldn't fulfill. And I finally asked them, I go, what do you need from me? And they're like, an adventure. I just kind of like the interaction. I want to hear what you have to say. I just whatever. And it took because what she was saying to me is just be authentic. What they were saying to me was just be cool. Just do what you do. Like, just let me be a witness to it. And oh, by the way, what's in it for me is I'm like, oh, well, this is what I can get for you. I want to help you get to where it is you need to go, help you, coach you, whatever. And they were like, thank you. That's what I need. And it was it took everything else off the table. It actually gave us boundaries. It gave us everything. Everything happened once you communicated that part of understanding where somebody was. And I think the coolest part of this journey is that when you do meet people, you do have to you have to meet them where they're at. And I'd forgotten that for a moment because I was assuming where she was at. I was assuming where people were at. And then even though I do this work all the time and I practice it all the time and I consciously meditate and I consciously do certain things, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to create that standard and say, even when I was asking a question like, what do you need from me? I was trying to create the standard to say, like, my standard is I want to make sure I over deliver, right? It's that over delivery thing. And we just get stuck in so many different ways because we go down that assumption road. But
I love what you're talking about, though. I think there's a humility behind asking that question in and of itself.
Yeah.
That opens the door to the growth that you're actually looking for. And so many of us don't want, because our ego just wants us to be right. We're trying to lock in that sense of security. But the humility to go, hey, what do you need from me? Now they can give you an answer. They're included in the conversation. Now you know how to meet them where they're at.
Well, listen, one of the most common fallacies of people that start doing mediumship work is that they have to be right. They have to perform at a certain level. They have to whatever. No. You have to meet the person where they're at. I had a reading a couple of weeks ago, and the person was just crestfallen. I mean, I gave them validation. I gave them validating points. I gave them actually specifics. And I'm like, hey, here's your loved one. They're showing me this very specific thing, and this is the theme in which it comes in. She's like, oh my God, that is him. That is my person. And I'm like, fantastic. The rest of the reading had nothing to do with mediumship. It actually had everything to do with hearing her. Had everything to do with, hey, why don't you just ask me, right? Why don't you tell me a story about your loved one? For the next 15 minutes, we shared stories about people, that we cared about and loved. And you could go back. I mean, the traditional mediums like beat the shit out of me all the time because they're like, oh, that's not really mediumship, you're being a counselor and blah, blah, blah. Fucking evolve. Sorry, I'm just going to put that right there. Like, it is not about how right you are. I am right in that first 10 minutes where I'm saying, here's your validation. And I already know I can do this for a living. And by the way, if you don't evolve as a medium, and by the way, I'm totally calling out anybody that's been doing this for more than 5 years. If you're not evolving at this point to include the healing dynamic in your reading, you are absolutely, get your ego out of the way. Your ego is going to kill this industry. Your ego is going to kill yourself. And you've got to begin to kind of develop that next level of thing. And I'm not saying I can help you. I'm saying you have to be aware of it first. Like, you've got to, the thing that I have the most pride about anybody I ever work with is their emotional IQ goes up 10 points every single time they start to work on something. Like, emotional IQ is really where it's at, because that's where the cognitive dissonance is. That's where everybody else does this, but I have to do my own standard. That I can get with. I mean, that's a thing. How about we do five good minutes? How do you feel about that? We'll wrap up.
Favorite number is 5, so absolutely.
Your favorite number is 5?
Yes.
Wait a minute. What life path are you? Let me pull this
somewhere
up
in there.
Yeah, because we got your birthday up here. Oh, Jesus, for the love of God, I can't see this. So you're January 28th?
29th.
29th. When are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
I should probably have you show me proof. And what year were you born? 87?
87. I've had a few people be like, you sure you're born
87?
that day?
87?
Yeah.
So you're 12? So
almost 37. I'm going to come up in a couple months.
15, so that's 7. So you're actually on life path 1. You actually have no problem telling people like it is, do you?
If they're open to hearing it, I will say it straight. In fact, I really like when somebody just wants my blunt opinion, because it makes it so much easier. Like, I don't have to read between the lines. It's like, just tell me straight up. Like, okay. People don't always like what I have to say, but they're ready for it when they say that. Yes.
Yeah, so Wendy loves the saying of meeting people where they're at. Well, of course you do, Wendy. That's a fantastic thing. When you meet people where they're at, you actually relieve them of expectations. And Janice is talking about her students not to come to ideas to the blank page. I think it's blank page. Let blank page talk to you. Oh, I love that. So open kind of slate kind of thing, right? Like, go ahead and do it. All right, okay, guys. I used to have bumper music and all this other stuff. I'm going to figure out how to, how all the rest of this goes. And we're going to do 5 good minutes. By the way, I'm going to cut edit this, and you're going to be like, dude, that's like fantastic. I have like a whole bumper for it. It's kind of fun. Where it's like 5 good minutes. Anyways. All right, you ready? I'm going to give myself 5 minutes on the clock, and I have some things written down. I can't find them. Doesn't really matter. I work better off the top of my head because I work within a stream of consciousness. And are you ready to go?
Firing on all cylinders.
Are you sure?
Let's go, bro.
Let's go. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you completely
hundo?
And by the way, I cannot edit this. This is going out live. Like,
that's
so
okay.
If you say something shitty about another person, I can't really help it out.
I will curate on the spot. Let's go.
All right, here we go. Here's your warm up for 5 good minutes. All right, deserted island. You are given 1 cereal. Which cereal do you take forever?
Wow. 1 cereal
Ask
forever.
the fitness guy 0 value nutrition questions, everybody. I'm brilliant. I'm just letting you know. Go ahead. What's your cereal? I gave you a couple extra seconds.
This is probably really strange, but I love Cracklin Oat Bran.
Cracklin Oat Bran?
And I haven't had it in probably 20 years.
Shut up. Dude, why would you deny yourself that?
I just haven't thought to get it. I don't eat cereal tons.
All right. Favorite place you've been and what's on the bucket list for the must vacation place?
Favorite place I've been was out west to the national parks, Zion, with my father.
Fucking killer, right?
Yeah.
What's on your bucket list? Where you got to get to?
Bucket list. I'd like to go to Austin with my wife.
Austin, really? No kidding. By the way, I'm going to be in Austin next year. Oh my God, we should friggin' road trip that. Anyways, Don't digress.
And
video it. Favorite fabric?
Favorite fabric?
I said it.
The one I'm wearing right now. I'm not really sure what it is, but it has like this kind of like textured feel to it, but it's like a cotton kind of something in there.
A little bit of a learning center for everybody. He pays attention to what he puts in his body, not on his body, just to let you know. Go ahead.
I just hire a stylist to help me with that stuff.
You hire a stylist?
I did have a stylist, yes.
Did you really?
I was curious about how to learn how to dress myself.
Was it me?
I mean,
did I help you?
Let's go on a journey shopping
You
together.
have a show called Naked Sundays and you hired a stylist.
I mean, I got to make sure I craft the look in a certain way, right? Got to look good for you.
Favorite Ninja Turtle?
Leonardo.
Why?
Leader.
Who?
He was the leader.
He was a leader, of course. White Path 1 sitting there going, yeah, of course, I'm kind of in charge.
And
right?
my favorite color is blue.
Yeah,
so he also was the blue Ninja Turtle, and I love the Ninja Turtles.
Most favorite person or most famous person you've ever met?
He was the bassist from Nickelback. I trained him once. He came in to the shop.
You know, I'm through with standing in line to clubs I'll never get in. It's like the bottom of the ninth, and I'm never gonna win. Give me the guitar. We'll freaking have a jam. I'm only kidding. Don't do that to me.
Don't bust it out.
Oh my God. You know, I was in a band once where I had a bass player that insisted on us playing at least a couple of Nickelback tunes. I actually enjoyed it. But that being said, there you go. Okay, so how did you actually meet him?
He called up the first gym I was working at out of college. He called us up. He was touring. I didn't know what it was. They're like, some touring artist is coming into town. I literally asked this guy, so what kind of art do you do? And he was like, I'm a musician. Whatever. A little bit later on, we go outside. I'm training him outside. We're to like push a sled or something. This girl stops and she's like freaking out because I stopped asking questions after he seemed pretty quiet about it. She's freaking out. Like, are you? I don't even remember his name. Such and such from Nickelback, and she's like crying. He's like, yeah, it's me. And, I mean, he was a really nice guy. Gave us tickets later that night. Like the whole staff went out. Hey, it was a pretty sweet guy.
That's pretty cool. So, living or dead, who would you want to sit with for 10 minutes and pick their brain?
Living or dead, 10 minutes. Martin Luther King.
Oh, where do you want to go with it? What would be the first question you'd ask?
I think what I'm most curious about is how he led a platform of love. Like his model of leadership was love and turn the other cheek. And I thought that was profound too. I mean, we're still talking about him and he's been dead for how long? I thought that was truly profound, the act of living by it.
You got a couple of years eligibility left. What sport would you go back and play and seriously consider as a profession?
Seriously consider as a profession? I loved playing lacrosse the most. So that would be.
You are totally a lacrosse prick. I love it. You are totally a lacrosse prick. I love it. I love it. What was your position? You were a forward, weren't you?
Nah, I played midi. So
did you?
I liked playing both sides of the field.
But you were a sniper, weren't you?
I was athletic enough. I was never like the best, but I didn't start playing until almost high school.
I could totally see you snipering. I could totally see you snipering.
I still check my Instagram for like skills and tutorial things all the time. So.
Oh my gosh. If you weren't a fitness coach, what career do you think you'd be in?
I mean, in many things, I try to blend all the things that I do, but I always thought like teaching public speaking would be something I'd love to do.
Do you think you could ever work for somebody now?
No, 100%.
Oh my God.
100%. I know I can't.
The idea of getting like a state job and having to be there at 8:31 would just it would just totally leave that. What's your favorite tree?
Favorite tree? Ooh, that's a good one.
No, it's a shitty one, which is why you just called it a good one. You're good at public speaking and deflection.
Deflect.
It's in your chart. You're an Aquarius.
I'm gonna go with evergreen.
Evergreen. Why?
I like the smell.
Because it sounds like Nickelback.
I like the smell and it makes me feel fresh.
I love the smell of Nickelback.
I like all trees.
He did work out in your gym, so there's that too. There's that too. All right. So what is your greatest like personal professional accomplishment that you always hang your hat on?
Ooh. Personal accomplishment, that's a tough one.
Like what's the one thing that you said that you can say like, hey, you know what we did once as a group or we did as a company? Or
we did when I was at my first place, we had like 500 members between our first two gyms.
That's okay.
We did, it was pretty awesome. And it was before CrossFit became a thing. So we raised $100,000 for an initiative called CrossFit for Hope, and $100,000 went to St. Jude Children's Hospital, and I thought that was.
What did it go to?
St. Jude.
What is that?
That's the Children's Hospital. I think it's out in.
Got it. There we go.
So
there we go. We just want to make sure everybody knows what that is. I know what it is. They don't. but I think that's, pretty cool. I love doing mission-based work like that. And it's funny, even through all this, I always thought it was going to be like a company so I could have a front in a weird sort of way. So then I could always say, hey, we did this sponsored by whatever. People don't want to have it be sponsored by a medium. It's the funniest thing. It's the funniest thing. All right. Airbnbs or hotels or hostels?
Hotels.
Hotels. You really are a lacrosse prick, aren't you?
I like things professionalized, organized. I want to know what I'm getting myself into.
So my office is driving you crazy.
A little bit.
Good.
Tell it like it is.
I'm glad. My signs are crooked. My plans are overrun. It's pretty fun, actually. That's just the way I roll. All right. Well, listen, we want to thank you for being here, Caleb. And let's not forget that we want to get out to, oh, geez, here we go again. You got to go to this one right here. We want to get you out to Naked Sunday, nakedSundayStudios.com. And thank you so much for being a guest here.
Thanks, brother.
Share, like, and subscribe. Get it out there to people. Have a lot of fun. And by the way, guys, I am back. My schedule, I've got one more distance tour. I'm going to be down in Memphis next week. By the way, if you're in the greatest Memphis area, there are the exclusive package, I think, is sold out, but you can still get tickets for Friday night, which is a group circle there. Astoria Aesthetics is sponsoring me to get in there. Great people down there. Fantastic group. Can't wait to meet everybody. I've done a couple of meetings here. Just had another one last night. Got some exciting things. Can't wait to check out Graceland. And then, of course, be able to deliver great messages. I will also be doing a workshop on Saturday and then a masterclass on Saturday night. I think the masterclass is sold out. You might want to check to see the ticket at tbrandrs.com. Can't wait to kind of see this. And yes, T.S. Eliot, very kind of cool. Glad you guys enjoyed this. Having a lot of fun doing what I do as I do it, as I really, oh, look at the two of us. Look at that, huh?
There we go. Ian, bro.
Ian's going to call and be like, am I next? See, Ian doesn't want to go on stuff like this. He really doesn't. Like, he comes off like super cool, like, oh, I'm modest. And he's like, oh, I'm behind the scene. And I guarantee you he's going to be like, if he, you got two things going on, you're like, well, the love side was kind of black by your head, Brandon. Where Caleb is kind of, whatever.
Maybe he's tweaking. He's tweaking it all.
He can do with that Fern? Like he'll just come in with like nondescript. He'll be like, hey, why don't you just jump into this? And he'll be like, yeah, no. By the way, our commonality is the guy that helped me build the website. So there it is, guys. All right, guys, we're going to give the heart tap out to each and every one of you. I know it sounds like a big thing where we're going to do peace in the Middle East because, guys, it's both sides. We got to put down everything and actually talk this out. We got to talk out this 1,500-year war, whether you realize it or not. These differences are actually the same, and we've got to get to the bottom of it. So talk about past trauma and past life stuff. How about you quit beating yourselves up, and let's not kill anybody in the process. All right, guys, heart tap out to each and every one of you, and just remember to simply keep going. All right, brother, thanks so much. I enjoyed.
Thank you, brother.
All right, see you soon. And this is where we end it, and don't say anything stupid. Wait till I say I'm clear. All right, don't say anything stupid.